what Tom Cruise is allegedly saying to his friends about Nicole Kidman's divorce. Nicole has so much resentment towards Keith Urban despite putting on a brave face in public.
Well, I can wear heels now.
You thought you knew Tom Cruise, the charming movie star, the devoted father, the man who supposedly moved on from Nicole Kidman years ago. But what if that image was nothing but a perfectly polished illusion? What if Tom Cruise had been quietly keeping score for 24 years, waiting for this exact moment? Because right now, as Nicole Kidman's world falls apart amid her second heartbreaking divorce, insiders close to Tom are revealing what he's truly been saying behind closed doors. And it's nothing like the image of America's golden boy. The truth about Tom Cruise is about to shatter everything you believed about Hollywood's most iconic breakup. This changes everything. But before we unpack Tom's shocking confessions, we need to understand what Nicole Kidman is facing right now. Because what's unfolding between her and Keith Urban isn't just another high-profile split. It's a chilling echo of the same nightmare that tore her life apart 24 years ago, the heartbreak she thought she'd never have to live through again.
Very messy split between Australian iconic actress Nicole Kidman and her soon-to-be ex-husband, Australian country music singer Keith Urban.
June 2025. While everyone believed Nicole and Keith were still living their dreamy Nashville love story, Keith Urban was quietly moving out of their home. 3 months, 3 long months of Keith emotionally checking out while Nicole struggled to hold their family together. Sound familiar? Because it's the same heartbreaking thing Tom Cruise did to her back in 2001.
It was a big, important part of my life.
I went to bed alone. I was in bed before midnight. If I ever won again, I'm telling you, I'd be out for 24 hours.
The similarities are downright chilling. Back then, Tom filed for divorce out of nowhere, leaving Nicole stunned and heartbroken. She later confessed she truly believed their marriage was perfect, right up until he blindsided her. Now, jump to September 29, 2025, when TMZ drops the bomb about Nicole and Keith's separation. Once again, Nicole is portrayed as the blindsided victim, the one who never saw it coming. But here's where things take a darker turn. For years, Hollywood insiders have quietly whispered about a troubling pattern. Nicole, they say, has a type, and it's not what you'd expect. She's drawn to powerful, controlling men who emotionally check out long before they walk away. And the proof? It's everywhere.
It's just got to be your purpose.
Yeah.
It really does.
Because there's so many sacrifices that
Totally.
in the industry, financial sacrifices, physical sacrifices.
Both Tom and Keith checked out of their marriages months before they were officially over. Both left Nicole clinging to relationships that had already flatlined. Both made her question her own sanity while they'd already detached emotionally. A celebrity divorce attorney who reviewed both cases said something chilling. The quick PR spin favoring Nicole after Keith's split wasn't accidental. It was calculated. Nicole learned from 2001. She learned that silence gives your ex control, that letting him shape the story ruins you. So this time, her team acted instantly. Within hours of the TMZ bombshell, insiders close to Nicole were briefing reporters. She was blindsided. She didn't want this. Keith had already checked out. This wasn't cleanup. It was controlled demolition. But what makes this heartbreak so much worse than her split from Tom is the public humiliation. Say what you will about Tom Cruise and his iron grip on image through Scientology, but he never dragged Nicole into public scandal. He never humiliated her with another woman. He kept their mess private, their split dignified. Keith Urban, not even close. His exit has been loud, messy, and painfully public, leaving Nicole reliving the same nightmare, only this time under a global spotlight.
Their lives were moving in different directions, and once he quietly set up his own place, it felt like the writing was on the wall. Well, today TMZ is reporting that Keith has another woman.
Because while Nicole was still reeling from the shock of her marriage falling apart, while she was desperately trying to protect her 2 teenage daughters from the chaos, Keith was preparing to humiliate her in the most public way imaginable. And when Tom Cruise caught wind of what was about to unfold, Insiders say he couldn't help but feel a dark, twisted sense of satisfaction. You see, Tom had always believed Keith was nothing more than a rebound, someone who fit the image Nicole wanted to project after their divorce. For 24 years, he'd watched from afar as Nicole praised Keith as her savior, the man who healed her after their so-called loveless marriage. He'd watched her paint Keith as the hero who rescued her from him. But Tom Cruise never forgot, and he certainly never forgave. So when the Maggie Rose scandal was about to explode and tear apart everything Nicole believed about her perfect second marriage, Tom finally got to say the words he'd been holding on to for 2 decades, "I told you so." What followed proved him right in the most brutal way possible, leaving Nicole facing a kind of public humiliation she'd never endured before. Because at least Tom Cruise's betrayal happened in private, behind closed doors. Keith Urban's betrayal? The entire world was about to witness it, live, merciless, and impossible to escape.
When people say that they will do something and they don't, and I don't like being let down. I also have a thing with Keith actually, where I call him, and I know it's terribly demanding, but if he doesn't answer and I have to keep calling back, I get anxious.
And then it happened. The moment that confirmed Tom Cruise's 24-year suspicion about Keith Urban and shattered Nicole Kidman's world in the most public, humiliating way imaginable. September 2025. Keith Urban steps onto the Chicago stage, performing before thousands of screaming fans, when he does something that sends shockwaves through Nashville and seals the fate of his marriage forever. In the middle of his set, instead of singing his familiar lyrics about "Baby," Keith locks eyes with his 25-year-old guitarist, Maggie Rose, and croons, "When they're trying to get you, Maggie, I'll be your guitar player." Maggie, not Nicole. Not his wife of 19 years. Not the mother of his children. Maggie. And in that moment, everything changed.
TMZ points out that when Keith was playing a residency in Las Vegas, he points at Maggie when singing the lyric, "I'm gonna love you."
The video went viral within hours. Nashville insiders were stunned into silence. This wasn't just a lyric change. This was Keith Urban publicly serenading another woman while his wife sat at home, silently enduring the collapse of their marriage. But that was only the beginning. Because what followed would prove that Tom Cruise's 24-year assessment of Keith Urban was painfully accurate. Tom had long told friends that Keith was nothing more than a rebound, a man who perfectly fit the image Nicole wanted the world to see. That Keith was never the saint everyone believed he was. And now, sources close to the situation claim Keith had been shamelessly flirting with other women for months. While Nicole was mourning the death of her mother in 2024, one of the darkest moments of her life, Keith was allegedly involved with a woman 32 years younger than him. The signs were everywhere. Keith was spotted without his wedding ring after shows. Maggie Rose appeared at multiple tour stops despite not being listed as an official band member. Videos surfaced showing Keith and Maggie sharing what witnesses described as intimate, suggestive moments on stage, completely inappropriate for a married man. Within the industry, the whispers grew louder. The talk in Nashville wasn't about Keith's new songs anymore. It was about his alleged affair with Maggie. And the most heartbreaking part? Everyone seemed to know, except Nicole. That's when Tom Cruise re-entered the picture, and his sense of vindication became crystal clear. Because while Nicole faced the most public humiliation of her life, Tom was allegedly telling close friends something cold and eerily calculated. This is exactly what I expected from Keith Urban. For Tom, it wasn't just gossip. It was prophecy fulfilled.
Oh my gosh. There we go. We find happiness. We're coming up to 20 years of marriage, actually.
October 3rd, 2025. Keith Urban takes the stage for his first concert since the divorce headlines hit, but suddenly, Maggie Rose is gone. Completely missing. The woman he'd been serenading on stage for months has mysteriously vanished. TMZ scrambles to spin the story, calling it a scheduling mix-up. They claim Maggie was never officially part of the tour, that this was all just a misunderstanding. But Nashville wasn't fooled. By then, everyone already knew what had been happening on that tour. Sources revealed that Maggie's father, disturbed by the growing speculation, stepped forward to defend his daughter. He insisted their connection was purely musical, nothing romantic. But the damage was irreversible. The world had already watched Keith Urban publicly sing to another woman while his wife was home, trying to survive the collapse of their marriage. And somewhere in his Hollywood Hills mansion, Tom Cruise was allegedly feeling something he hadn't felt in 24 years, absolute vindication. Because everything he'd warned about Keith was unfolding exactly as he'd predicted. When the noise became deafening, Nicole did something she almost never does. She dropped the mask. Not on a red carpet. Not in a press conference. But in a quiet, carefully lit Vogue conversation recorded just before the world discovered her marriage was ending. She shared a truth that sounded more like a confession than a quote. "How many times do you have to be taught," she asked softly, "that you think you know where your life is going, and then it isn't going in that direction?" It wasn't said for sympathy. It was the voice of a woman already bracing for the storm she could feel rising behind her ribs. Paris Fashion Week became her first battlefield. A new haircut. A deliberate silhouette. 2 daughters beside her, anchors in high seas. She joked about nerves, but the subtext was unmistakable. Control the frame, or the frame controls you. This wasn't vanity. It was strategy. A visual declaration that said, "I am not hiding." While the headlines screamed about separation, custody logistics, and a husband still touring without his ring, Keith Urban was out there changing lyrics, and Nicole Kidman was changing the narrative.
I think everything is motivated by wanting to take care of your children.
Incredible mom. Loving maternal, and teaching me a lot about how to raise children.
If 2001 was the blow that stole her breath, then 2025 is the echo that taught her how to inhale through the pain. Back then, Nicole said she believed her life was perfect, until it wasn't. Now, she speaks of uncertainty as something permanent. Less fairy tale, more forecast. And that contrast is staggering. Tom's ending hid behind closed doors and vague statements. Keith's is unraveling in time-stamped reels. Did he really say that on camera? A humiliation on endless loop. In both versions of Heartbreak, she's the one absorbing the impact. But this time, she's controlling the optics of her recovery in real time. While Nicole was quietly piecing herself back together through designer armor and curated interviews, Tom Cruise was having a far different reaction to her very public heartbreak. And what he allegedly told his inner circle would expose a truth about Hollywood's most carefully plotted revenge, 24 years in the making. October 13th, 2025. Sources close to Tom Cruise finally break their silence with claims that shocked even his most loyal critics. Because, according to these insiders, Tom isn't merely watching Nicole's second marriage fall apart. He's enjoying it. "This is karma finally doing its job," Tom reportedly told friends, unable to suppress his satisfaction as Nicole's marriage collapsed in the glare of the public eye. But this wasn't just idle gossip. It was the victory lap of a man who'd been keeping score for more than 2 decades. The same man once painted as the villain in their story, now watching his ex-wife face the kind of public unraveling he endured privately, and finding, at last, a cruel kind of peace in her pain.
She has so much resentment and heartache that inevitably is going to come to surface. And when that happens, it's not going to be pretty. So that's what's coming in. Maybe she'll unleash it during a movie. But yeah, she's not feeling this.
Truly grasped was the depth of Tom's bitterness toward Nicole. It wasn't only about their divorce. It was about how she rewrote the entire narrative afterward. How she cast him as the domineering villain while recasting Keith Urban as her shining knight in armor. But Tom's alleged reaction to her downfall reveals something even darker about his nature. Because this is the same controlling mindset that wrecked their marriage to begin with. The same obsessive need to win that cost Nicole her connection with Isabella and Connor through Scientology's manipulation. Former Scientologists claimed the church wiretapped Nicole's phone and weaponized her children against her. Tom either knew and allowed it, or he was so deeply embedded in the church's grasp that he couldn't stop it. Either way, it's a disturbing pattern that still defines him. The cruel irony. Tom's relationships after Nicole have followed that exact same blueprint of control and abandonment. His marriage to Katie Holmes ended in secrecy, her fleeing overnight with their daughter, Suri, and never turning back. Now, Tom is estranged from Suri too, repeating the very cycle he began with Nicole and their kids. Insiders say Tom's cognitive dissonance is staggering. While privately basking in Nicole's heartbreak, he's allegedly reached out under the guise of concern, offering sympathy that feels hollow. It's a contradiction only he could sustain. A performance wrapped in control, vengeance disguised as compassion. A faction built not on forgiveness, but on the illusion of empathy.
from Nicole and her Hollywood cronies when they first divorced. He'll never forget or forgive how villainized he was, and in some ways, that far-reaching perception haunts him to this day. He's following the divorce news closely and
This is the real Tom Cruise. Not the charismatic movie icon or the perfectionist professional the public sees, but a man so consumed by resentment that he's carried a 24-year grudge against his ex-wife, quietly waiting for her to feel the same heartbreak he once inflicted. The cruelest part: Tom's alleged sense of vindication only confirms what Hollywood insiders have whispered for decades, that he never truly loved Nicole. Because real love doesn't keep score. Real love doesn't hope for your former partner's downfall. Real love doesn't celebrate when the mother of your children becomes a tabloid headline. Sources claim that what the world is witnessing now is exactly what Tom insists he's known all along, that Nicole's storybook marriages were always more illusion than truth. But his satisfaction exposes something much darker than her shattered fairy tales. It reveals a man so warped by control, so damaged by power, that he can no longer form genuine human connection. A man who allegedly uses Scientology as a weapon. A man who turns his own children into soldiers of ideology. A man who confuses revenge with redemption. And that's the ultimate tragedy. Because while Nicole has loved, lost, and still found the courage to rebuild, Tom Cruise remains imprisoned, not by walls, but by his own obsession. Watching life and love move on without him, trapped inside a fortress built of ego, control, and a religion that promised salvation but delivered isolation.
I wasn't able to handle the reality of my life.
The question isn't whether Tom was right about Keith. The real question is, what kind of man keeps score like this? And what does that reveal about why every woman in Tom Cruise's life eventually runs? But the most chilling part of this entire saga isn't Tom's quiet satisfaction or Keith Urban's public betrayal. It's the terrifying pattern that's emerged in Nicole Kidman's love life. A pattern so eerily precise, so emotionally devastating, it suggests something darker than bad luck in romance. Tom Cruise files for divorce without warning. Nicole is blindsided, stunned into silence. She begged him to try counseling, convinced their life was perfect until it shattered overnight. Then came the weaponization of faith and family. Her own children turned against her through Scientology's machinery of control. Fast forward to 2025. Keith Urban emotionally checks out months before the official split. Again, Nicole is blindsided, fighting to hold on to a marriage that's already slipping away. This time, it's not religion, it's reputation. A husband whose public affection suddenly turns into public humiliation. And just like before, her daughters are left watching another father figure fade from their lives. The parallels are chilling. The identical shock. The same desperate attempts to fix what was already over. Two men, 2 decades apart, both leaving Nicole stranded in emotional wreckage they created long before walking out the door. And yet, the most haunting part isn't how these stories end, it's how they begin. Because both men shared the same blueprint of control. Tom used faith and career manipulation to dominate the narrative. Keith used alleged infidelity and public spectacle to remind Nicole who held the power. Different decades. Different tactics. But the same result. Nicole Kidman left behind, again, by a man who needed control more than he ever needed love.
she is struggling. The source says she feels loss and grief she's carrying is far more intense than she lets on. In so many respects, Nicole is doing brilliantly. She's been a total pro throughout this, and her number one goal is to stay strong and not crumble for the sake of her daughter. She's been on autopilot, cramming her schedule like crazy and sticking tight to friends who are longing to set her up for some fun once she gives the word. While Kidman might seem like she's holding it all together, the source says there's a feeling like the dam has to burst at some point.
The cruelest irony is that Nicole's capacity for deep, committed love, the very trait that makes her vulnerable to heartbreak, is also what allows her to survive it. While Tom stays trapped in resentment and Keith hides behind shame and embarrassment, Nicole continues to show up, love deeply, and rebuild herself from the ruins. But the question haunting this story isn't whether Nicole will survive another heartbreak. She's proven time and again that she can endure any storm. The real question is, what kind of men keep abandoning a woman who loves with this much devotion? And what does that say about them? So here we are, 24 years later. Tom Cruise's alleged karma comment has revealed more about him than any mission, impossible stunt ever could. His satisfaction over Nicole's heartbreak doesn't prove he was right about Keith Urban. It proves he's still the same controlling man who destroyed their marriage decades ago. Is Nicole Kidman destined to repeat this pattern forever? To love completely, lose devastatingly, and rebuild beautifully? Or will she finally break her silence about what really happens when you cross Tom Cruise and the Church of Scientology? Will Tom's darkest truth finally come to light? Will Nicole expose the real reason behind both of her marriages, their identical patterns of abandonment and control? And most importantly, will Hollywood finally hold Tom Cruise accountable for the trail of broken women and alienated children he's left behind? The truth is coming. And when it does, it will shatter everything you thought you knew about Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman, and the hidden darkness behind Hollywood's most calculated revenge. What do you think?